Thank you very much. Right, we have Ngaire Button and Stuart Mitchell for the Grassmere Residents Association. Is that you again, Aaron?
I'll sit in the back with you. Do the report.
Hi, Ngaire.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui ki a koutou. Thank you very much for hearing us today and giving us the opportunity to come and speak to you. I've got also with me Anne Toth and her husband behind me, Mike, who are Grassmere residents. You're all well familiar with the issues we face, and I know that Richard and Ryan have submitted a little bit earlier. So I just wanted to quickly flick through the site in Grassmere Street. You've heard us submit on this at other planning days. In fact, we're actually getting really good at submitting. We're hoping this might be the last time. That's our rather long history, goes back to about 2000 that we've been making submissions to the council, to ECAN, to the various planning, to Sarah, where else, Stuart, all over the place, to try and get our land, the corporate land belonging to about 10 landowners, into a place where we can develop it for housing. This was a statement made by an RPS Plan Change 1 by one of the commissioners, who said it would be quite wrong in our view not to allow development given the setting, and he goes on to talk about, advocate for the land to be included within the urban boundary, which it has now been included within the urban boundary. One of the reasons is it's virtually useless for anything else. It's impossible to farm there for a whole wide range of reasons, and we have found that there is actually a demand. There's a national housing problem, but actually I've lost count of the number of people who have walked up our driveway and said, can we buy a section off you? Can we buy some land? It's a part of the city which is well serviced. We've got a beautiful new cycleway that runs right past our front gate. Northland's just down the road, great schools. It's perfect. It's a really fantastic place to live, and people want to live there. This was a slide that we put in for when we came to speak to the Our Spaces team about why we should be developing closer into the city rather than going further out into the suburbs. So in summary, we're surrounded by residential amenity. We're close to Northlands. It's minimal investment in terms of social infrastructure. Close to the square, cycleways on the boundary, close proximity to the city to assist with the regeneration of the CBD. And so I'll just give Anne the opportunity to talk a little bit about, from her and her husband's point of view, how they're feeling.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anne Toth. We live at 45A Grassmere Street. We've lived there for 21 brilliant years and we've loved it. But the time has come that we need to move on rather than want to. The reasons being our ages. We're in our 70s and 80s respectively, and deteriorating health reasons. Mike's had 2 operations in the last 6 months, and it's possible he'll need another one. Some days he can hardly walk. His doctor has supplied a walking frame and a mobility parking card. Maintaining approximately 2¼ acres to an acceptable standard is proving to be very difficult for us. Our neighbours know that we would like to sell and downsize, but if we got a prospective buyer, we'd find it difficult to answer any questions they might have as to what the situation is. i.e. could they just buy the house or could they just buy the land, and could they build a little place on our land only? And have we definitely been rezoned residential now? At the moment we're feeling very much like we're under house arrest and we can't move on. Thank you.
So, as Ryan and Richard said, there are 8 landowners and all but one's keen to develop. Tex Mundy has found himself with the with all of the stormwater and the road on his property, so he virtually economically, for him, he is going to lose his land if we develop. So what we've come to ask you for today is in the annual plan, in the setting of the budget, to include the Grassmere the Cranford Basin, the development of the Cranford Basin. That way, you can apply DCs to the sections for the infrastructure. At the moment, we have no mechanism to equitably work out the infrastructure costs across many and varied landowners. So we've got significant infrastructure to put in. So the road, footpaths, the stormwater, and we have no financial mechanism by which to do that. I realise that and understand the constraints on council budgets, but if we can apply DCs, the development contributions, to the sections, then we can develop, and you will recover the money through development contributions and rates. It's the only way that it's going to work. I can't see any other way that we can do this. We are really willing to develop, and there is a demand for the land and a demand for the sections, but unless we have that mechanism of development contributions to equitably spread out the cost across all of the sections, and that way Mr. Mundy would also get a fair amount of cost recovery. So notwithstanding the fact that we think the stormwater should move off his land and onto the council site. So that's our request, that within annual planning and long-term planning, that you think about including the Grassmere Street land.
So I just kind of want to... Oh, sorry, Stu.
Can I just add that letter that's been circulated was written by leading planning consultant David Lovell-Smith. And perhaps if I can just speak very briefly to some of the highlighted points, and I might answer some of the questions from the previous submission, and maybe some you've still got yourself. But the first bit, it says, as discussed, this is written to the council officer, we believe that the nature of the regeneration plan is so onerous that development of the area is probably not feasible. It's so onerous that development of the area is probably not feasible. He goes on to say the ability to develop the area is further hampered by some of the requirements of the regeneration plan, and then he talks about the following matters requiring review by the Christchurch City Council. The stormwater basins, which you've heard in some depth on, the collector road and the stormwater basins again, and the costs of those, the densities and the rationalisation of groundwater effects. The last two are technical issues which we'll probably try and find our way through, but I guess the purpose of this submission around the annual plan is the contention that there'll be a lot of money down the track if these initial costs were covered in the annual plan, as Mr. Peebles said. There's been no explanation. At the top of the second page, this consultant has asked the council for the explanation as to why those stormwater ponds can't be all put in the same area, and there's been no answer given to that. The density issue I won't touch on, but it does go on. If you read that, it says that the regeneration plan, by the time you take into account the offsets from springs, waterways, etc., would have section sizes at 200 square metres, which is, I think we all understand, is probably a bit ridiculous. And then the groundwater areas as well, he says they're simply unachievable. So I think the point here is that there's a number of issues that make this very difficult. The financial considerations overlay all of that, and if they can be solved by the council in the first instance, perhaps coming up front to meet some of those costs around the hydrogeological survey, the collector road and the stormwater basins, then there's probably a big prize at the end of it all through increased rates and DCs.
So I just wanted to, I mean, my question was just in relation to kind of not knowing this. I mean, you say a council officer was asked why it can't be achieved, but I mean, presumably you wrote to the council and asked for a written explanation as to why.
Yeah, well, this letter, of course, covers a number of bases, and I guess Ivan's response to that was talk to this person about that, talk to this person about that, and so there's been verbal communication
We've been
between the
unable
consultant.
to get it.
And
But
as recently as 11 o'clock this morning,
it's got to the point now where we have to ask for that advice.
You probably
so,
do.
So we don't
as recently
know.
as 11 o'clock this morning, I was told that he still hasn't had an answer to that question.
Right. Sarah.
Thank you. Just two quick things. Firstly, the outline development plan with the stormwater basins in it that we've heard about twice now was in the original draft regeneration plan. Did you submit on that thinking it would be an issue at the time? Because my impression, I don't remember hearing that it was going to be a problem at the time.
We were under the understanding, and were clearly told actually as a group, that the lines and the plan was indicative only.
Yeah.
So that some of those things could be moved. So Mr.
Moved,
Mundy,
but the stormwater
The
ponds would need to
stormwater-
they would need to happen.
would need to
They just
happen.
might be able to be somewhere else.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, or that we might be able to spread them across in different places around the development
Okay.
in order to make it happen. But we've since been told that actually it's not as indicative as what we understood, and that could be just a misunderstanding in terminology.
Yeah.
But certainly Mr. Mundy did not understand that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing was that when you came to the FDS hearings and the space hearings, you were clear that the key impediment was the fact that the development contributions that we would then receive when the development happened further down the track, what you were asking the hearings panel for was for those to be used now to complete the works.
No, well,
You were saying that...
my understanding of development contributions and our understanding of development contributions is that they can only be applied where the infrastructure is in the council's long-term plan.
Yeah, and
So-
because there wasn't any funding allocated because of the timing of the regeneration plan,
Yeah.
you wanted us to allocate the DCs in the long-term plan or in our planning somewhere so that they then could be applied to the developments happening.
But to do that, the building of the infrastructure has to be in your long-term plan.
Yeah.
So if but the building of the infrastructure is in your long-term plan and you plan to do that, to put the road in, then the cost recovery comes as the sections are sold.
Yeah.
But if it's left to us, then we have to, landowners, that we're not developers, we've got small holdings, but we have to try and come up with $6 million to build the road, $100,000 to do the hydrology report. We have to buy Texas land and try and sort out how we're going to do the stormwater. We just can't do that.
We have spoken to a number of developers, and I have to say none of them are interested. It's too hard.
Because they've got to put so much money up front. It's because it's a big, it's a big area,
Yeah.
and
Over
there's a lot
30
of money to spend. So they have to put a lot of money up front to actually do that. Whereas if we use that's what the council's mechanism of DCs is for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we certainly understand that, and I mean, I think that there's somehow there's been a disconnect between the regeneration planning process and what you're at, because I certainly didn't understand that this would be a problem.
I just finally say that, under the regeneration plan, this is 30 hectares of land within less than kilometres from the centre of the city.
It's what?
Less than 4 kilometres from the centre of the city.
Yeah, but I know exactly what it is, which is why we agreed that it should go into the urban development limits, which it was excluded from, despite all of the comments that have been made. It was not in there, and the Section 71 put it into the urban development limits. There were other things that had to be addressed as well, and that was the stormwater cleaning up inside the Horseshoe Lake. So, there was quite a lot of work that went on as a result of the submissions process that highlighted a number of issues. Yeah.
So
Right.
I guess the question is, apart from the financial side, is there a circuit breaker in here with somebody in the council that we can work with to try and make these things happen?
We'll certainly ask the chief executive to talk to you about that. Yep. All right.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you very much.